Okay, so I'll give you some context. The way I am using Alma, it's different from the original use of the software, where it is supposed to be a teaching assistant for students, right? In the case that I work with Alma, is that we shifted the role. We turned the professors into students, and the
Mm-hmm.
course content was how to teach. So it's one step before they actually go to the classroom, and the idea is that it doesn't matter how good an AI assistant you have. If the course is poorly designed, I don't think the AI can do a great job in helping the students, because the professor could be doing a very poor job in explaining ideas, conflicting ideas, and then the students might be talking to the AI, unable to know whether it is giving the right answer, if it's hallucinating, if the professor is right or wrong. So the first thing I think that's very important is to have great confidence in what is being taught and how it is being taught. And that's usually a problem, because professors all over the world, no exceptions, are not trained how to teach. So what they so and when I say how to teach, I don't mean you're just standing into the classroom and starting to teach. If I give you the challenge that, hi Sophia, we've hired you at San Francisco Bay University and you're going to teach marketing, something that you've been working for many years, how will you start? And you see, the process about thinking starts at the very moment when you're given the role how to teach. So, what does one need to think? Maybe you started thinking of strategies you already know. Maybe you started thinking of the books you might have read in your undergrad or master's, which is the right thought, but that's not the only thing. So, we want to train faculty in how does one prepare for such a large assignment. Hey, you're going to teach something, you might be very good at it, but let's figure out how to teach it. So I can break it down into components. This is what I do in my course. So the first thing is, we imagine, what are you going to teach, which is very content specific, but there's a lot of conversation and back and forth. Before you decide what you want to teach, you start with, what do I want my students to achieve? What skills do I want? So let's say by the end of this course, my students would be able to create fantastic social media posts that are going to get at least that number of customer attraction, which means we are going to teach them the color theory. I'm going to teach them the use of white spaces. I'm going to use them the right use of font size, and we're going to talk about what kind of images could be used. We talk about follow-up theories, anything, right? But the outcome was that you are going to arrive at a point where my post is going to get these many likes or attractions. So then I think about, okay, if I want them to develop that skill set, what content is the best? And then I think about, how do I share that content? A few decades ago, maybe just a few years ago, people thought that subscribing a textbook is the best way because it's consistent, it's in a sequence. But I find it to be a shortcut, that you're not thinking about a universe of resources that is out there, and they're not necessarily in text. Students learn a lot not just by reading these days, they learn a lot by watching as well. So there could be a TED talk, there could be a podcast, there could be an audiobook, there could be an infographic, there could be a meme as well. Who knows? Tons of things out there that can teach you so much. So I want to so professors are then so I want the professors to think about content in a very multimodal way. What different mediums can I use? And then self evaluate. Is this content relevant? Is this content respectful of the communities which are inside the class? We usually don't think about that. Is this content cutting edge? I mean, I'm not using a book from 1970s and talking about theories that are no longer valid. And last and very important, is this content accessible? Am I subscribing a $200 research article that only the rich students will be able to buy, but my poor students will not be able to see that, or will have to use unfair means to access that? So you see, just at the very first point on what content do I want to choose, there's so much thinking that goes on. Professors spend zero time on that. What we usually do is, and I'll be very honest, for example, I pick up this book, Teaching at Its Best. I read it. I was like, what a great book. This should be a course. And then I design a course and I teach the whole thing around this. And it's not even funny because it's 100% accurate. That's how we teach. We read a book, we fall in love with it, and then we teach it the whole semester because we want everyone to read this book. And we find out the course is a shortcut to do that. That's just the very beginning. So my training with Alma featured this part to start with, that can you design a course from scratch? And the constraints we used were interesting. I thought that if you're teaching a course for many many years, you might be already in a fixed mindset that I will use that no matter what AI says. So I thought maybe we can push them in dimensions that they have not explored. For example, what if a physicist is taught to teach a course with music? Now they don't know a textbook that's available right away, right? But the physics of music could be fantastic, right? We're talking about acoustics, sounds, waves, essentially coming down to mechanics, equilibrium, standing waves, lots of that. Good mathematics involved as a part of the process. Trigonometry kicks in, but I can't think of a textbook. So we wanted them to think about transdisciplinary case scenarios. I know one of my professors, colleagues, I'm forgetting exactly the title. He's a music professor. I think he was combining two very different domains. I need to check with Brad. Maybe it should be in Alma's history. What course was he creating? Brad Fuster was his name. He was creating some very interesting courses involving classical music in a certain time from a certain lens. So this is how we started that. And then we went into, before you start a class, you generally prepare a syllabus. And syllabi are, you went to university, maybe they gave it to you, maybe they don't, but usually they are a set of rules given to you. Maybe students read some parts of that, maybe they don't, depends on the instructor. So for us, it's very important that when you're writing that, it acts as an intellectual document that gives a good indication to the reader, hi, this is what's going to happen. And I'm pretty sure for most of the semester we will do this. We might make changes here and there depending on the class situation. But to do that, you need to be intellectually very thoughtful. So we worked on the idea of what we call transparent course design. So we taught Alma what is transparent course design, and then Alma was trained in asking a series of questions. Have you created your learning outcomes? And faculty say yes. They would say, all right, share it with me. They share it, and Alma says, I don't think it matches the Bloom's taxonomy. I can give you an idea. Here is how it can be rewritten better. And then you could hear in the room, faculty were saying, that's a small change, but that seems good. And then when they write the assignments, so it says, all right, what are your assessment mechanisms? So faculty write 4, 5 homeworks, quizzes, and then it asks a series of questions, interesting questions. Are you doing this because this is how you were taught? Are you using these assignments because that's how you learned? You're using these assignments because you don't know anything else how to do it. You're using these assignments because you have tested so many and you landed on this one as the best one, or you're completely clueless, right? So I can't think of any other scenario why people use assignments. Sometimes you creatively design some, which was the second last part I said that I've tested many and this turns out to be the best. But I doubt people do that. They just stick to a pattern. And I'm going to give, may I ask, what's your major, Sophia? What's your background in?
I did creative management, and I have a master degree on media management.
That's a very creative enterprise. I think assignments would be more creative in your domain, like requiring to perhaps show your creativity. But usually in sciences and humanities, what you see is a pattern: fix homeworks, quizzes, mid exam, final exam. And in humanities, 4 papers, one every 4 weeks, a reflection paper to see your growth. So people don't really do that because they have tested or reflected on it. They do it because it's convenient. They do it because they went through that and they think, well, look at me, I'm so great. So if my students do that, they'll be so great too. So the AI is a very interesting neutral platform to ask these questions without being judged, which I think is a great part. Because when I tell them something, I'm still young than most of them. They look at me and like, what is this young man telling me? Why do I listen to him? My experience is equal to his age. But when they listen to the AI just saying some neutral stuff, they don't have anyone to fight with, and they don't have to be afraid that someone's watching. It's just a genuine conversation. No judgment is happening. No one is judging them for not knowing. some basics. So we go through a series of health checks of the syllabus. When they write their assignments, AI says, "Great, do you want to imagine an assignment with me?" So faculty says, "Yes, in this paper you're going to submit an essay." Like, no, that's not enough. Start with, why does this assignment exist? And then it says, "I know it's a lot of work. Why don't you just tell it me, share with me what do you want, and I can create the whole thing for you." And then the AI creates rubrics for them as well. Faculty struggle in creating rubrics. Not everyone uses it. And I think in a 2-3 hour workshop, you come out with a very polished course, like a completely solid content course, design, assignments, rubrics, uh, and 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 when I look at the products that come out from such workshops, they require very little work in making them a better quality. They already look good. So it's like an AI doctor that's looking at your courses and it's doing a health check and it's telling you this is where you're weak, this is where you're strong. What we have not done yet is, hypothetically, we have imagined what will they do in the classroom. So AI also asks them, how do you want to teach? And then it says, listen, you have these 16 weeks. I would suggest in week 4 you do flip learning because the content is so easy. They can watch it at home and the class could be turned into an interactive class. And then it says, I see there's a theme towards governance. So why don't you start a project in week 9 and design groups? And so in every class, they start working in teams and groups, and that happens. And then it says, I see that this particular part requires reflection in the field. So if you have the budget, why don't you do a field trip? So it already starts to give ideas to faculty. What can they do besides just standing on the stage and giving a lecture? And I like that. Sometimes it's just the ideas that spark some thoughts and conversations. Maybe they will do none of that, but at least they're thinking about it. And the final part is the feedback, where I ask them, openly ask AI, how can you be a feedback partner? I mean, I don't want you to grade for me, but what can you do? For example, can I give you a batch of student assignments and find trends for me? Like, start telling me that your students are mostly struggling with grammar, or almost everyone is getting that particular idea incorrect. I cannot do these batch assessments on my own, because when I'm reading a student paper one by one, I don't always remember what previous student was saying, and you sometimes can miss those patterns of failure as well. So that's what I wanted them to think about. So you can imagine this as a teaching the faculty a course on how to teach, and we were using Alma as a teaching assistant, or in some ways a co-instructor for that, and we did it for 3-4 days. And one interesting thing we did, instead of using a survey or a questionnaire at the end of the day to rate the workshop, like how useful was the workshop 1 to 10, we did a we did an Alma Q&A. That it was a general Q&A. Hey, you went through the session of student values. Was there any value that stuck with you? And one can say, oh, sorry, I was sleeping in the session. And says, no worries. Here are the 6 values. Is there anyone you like now? And so it's like an informal feedback for me to see what they retained, what they forgot, what they valued. And without asking them to rate something, I can qualitatively see which parts worked and which did not. This was not a large group. I was doing it with a smaller group of faculty. There were only 3 of them, the full-time faculty. I'm going to do a larger session with all faculty either on September 14th or September 21st, where all the adjunct faculty, around 20 of them, will be in the room. So I will know more about how that worked. But this is an interesting case. I can already tell you the distribution. Out of the 3 faculty members, one is teaching for the first time in her life. She's a postdoc in psychology. The second one is sort of a mid-career computer scientist who has worked in the industry and has been teaching as an adjunct every now and then. He's now the head of computer science department. Already is a good teacher with some very traditional values, but is a good teacher. And the third person is from the business industry, CEO of a company, has joined us as a management chair of the MBA program, but is very sure of himself and he thinks no one can teach him anything. So very different, right? On one edge, you have someone who really wants to learn, and on the other end, someone who's very skeptical and thinks that they know everything and there's very little that they can learn. So interestingly, what happened was that everyone was engaged and everyone was spending more time than I had imagined in having a conversation. And I had to force end all the conversations because they were not stopping. They were getting lots of feedback. They were just having fun. I mean, someone was, I think for the first time, someone was talking about to them about their course. People usually don't, I mean, no one will come in my office and say, hey, tell me about your great course. Let's talk about it for hours. That doesn't happen. And I have spent so much time building it. I would like to do that. So one of the sessions, quite interestingly, two of my colleagues were unwell that day, and so they joined online, so I couldn't see them, and only the young postdoc was in the room. But one of the senior professors, who the senior most guy, the business department head, forgot to turn off his microphone. And what we could hear is every now and then, I think it was a sound of wonder, like, oh, oh, oh. Like these sounds would appear. I mean, I couldn't see him; his camera was turned off.
Great
But
feedback.
but we would just hear this sound repeating itself in a pattern, like, ah, ooh. I hope it was not a dog biting him every now and then, and he was actually working. But this, it just gave an impression that he was thinking about what's happening. One additional thing, an adjunct who is a a professor, someone who's trained in literature from Berkeley, solid credentials, was is joining us. Has already now joined us to teach a course on writing. It's called How to Tell Your Story. They will be using Alma, and they were pretty skeptical of AI. I wouldn't go on to say anti AI, but very skeptical of AI because it hallucinates, and they have a fear that it takes the ability of people to learn on their own, a well-founded fear in many ways. But they had not thought about this role of AI, like becoming a companion to those who are, let's say, somewhat hallucination proof. So if I am a historian and it tells me fake history, I know that this is something I need to avoid. A student might not. So they really, so her name is Andriana, and Andriana really appreciated that. And she said that I had not seen AI through this light because I had always imagined what it is stopping people from doing, for example, stopping to learn, but I've never thought what it can enable people to do what they would not otherwise. And I think that was a very powerful reflection that even though I'm accomplished, I really don't know much about the art of teaching. And I think this tool is giving me some very nice values. Interestingly, teaching, there is no objective science or a formula to it. It's very contextual. So in the end, it's very subjective which parts of AI suggestions you want to retain, which ones you want to discard. So I think that's in that scenario, it was helpful because everyone was imagining how AI is going to change their teaching in the class. I doubt they will use it every day. I think they'll only use it when I bring them to workshops. It's a lifestyle choice that will become, I think, more frequent use will come over time. I have started to use AI regularly every day. I stopped using Google for news. I open ChatGPT and I welcome it and I say, hey, what are the news for the day? You know me pretty well by now, so give me the right news. And yeah, so I think it's a lifestyle choice. And over time, I'm going to make some pushes as well. I'm going to budget AI for all, which means all faculty members will get membership, at least one or two memberships for some AI software. I think I need to test it one with a larger group of people to see how everyone ends up using it, because that will give me ideas on how to make Alma more powerful, how to feed more content. I think the questions we created were created real time and was just a quick conversation. I think that we need to very systematically think of, imagine almost running the whole workshop. So lots of whys and the whole things can be designed within Alma. So it becomes a very self-sustained conversation. So instead of me or someone else coming and doing a workshop, Alma can start to end, take the whole user through their journey, which means it will also become very time independent. Something like we created for these workshops. At the end of the day, they were having some conversations, but I was still preparing them for a few things. So I would love to build some self-teaching modules with Alma, like a faculty comes in and says, hey, I'm going to teach this course in spring. I am uploading the PDF. Let's start. And then Alma knows how to start. And it starts in a sequence. It starts by thinking about the thought about the course, gives comments on the relevance of the content, accessibility of the content, then thinks about the course distribution, asks questions about the teaching method, takes them through the assignments, creates course policies, ethics, ethos, feedback, resource constraints.
That
That
makes
I would love
sense.
as a tool to exist. Yeah. I think I was very surprised with the accuracy of Alma's responses. It remembered the conversations very well. I think there was one surprise. I was talking to Alma, and the browser crashed. Something happened.
Mm-hmm,
Alma stopped
mm-hmm.
responding, and I refreshed, and it said, "Hi, are you comfortable speaking in which language do you choose?" The same prompt that it gives in the beginning. I said, "Listen, I was talking to you for like 10 minutes. I don't want to repeat. I don't want to type it all." It says, "No problem. This is what we just talked." I was like, "What? You have memory?" That was a big surprise for me. Even if it's a short term memory, it had memory. So it meant I could resume the conversation after the crash. Otherwise, I would have stopped like completely. Like, listen, I don't want to talk to you because I don't want to repeat the same thing. It's like talking to someone on the helpline. They put you with someone else, and you start explaining your problem again and again and again. So I didn't want that. I think that was a good surprise.